Ready? Hold it!
For 30 years, Johnny Carson was the king of late-night cool, sharp, and impossible to rattle. But every king has his breaking point. When guests showed up drunk, wild, or completely unfiltered, even Carson couldn't hide it. From awkward meltdowns to full-blown chaos, these are the moments that turned live TV into absolute madness. Let's count down the most unhinged guests who pushed Johnny to the edge. On The Tonight Show, Burt Reynolds was the kind of guest audiences loved, charming, quick-witted, and full of great Hollywood stories. But when he appeared alongside his comedian friend Dom DeLuise in 1974, what began as a routine interview quickly turned into one of the most chaotic moments in late-night television history. It started innocently enough. DeLuise, known for his physical comedy, brought out a can of whipped cream, supposedly to demonstrate a cooking technique he was famous for. Yet from the beginning, there was mischief in the air. He winked at Reynolds while explaining his culinary skills to Johnny Carson, who, with quiet experience, remarked, "I have a feeling this isn't going to be about cooking." Even so, Carson could not have predicted what followed. Without warning, DeLuise sprayed whipped cream directly at Reynolds. In response, Reynolds grabbed a pitcher of water from Carson's desk and dumped it straight down DeLuise's pants. The audience erupted in shocked laughter as the two men instantly escalated into a full-blown food fight. At first, Carson seemed amused by the antics. But as the chaos spilled onto him, the mood shifted. Reynolds, fully caught up in the moment, turned and sprayed whipped cream across Carson's pristine suit. "That's a $500 suit," Carson exclaimed, his composure cracking just enough to reveal genuine irritation. By then, it was too late. The set had descended into complete anarchy. Carson kept smiling, but longtime viewers could tell the difference. This was no longer his usual easy laughter. What viewers at home couldn't fully see was the extent of the damage. By the end of the segment, the carpet was soaked, the desk was dripping with cream, and Carson's suit was beyond saving. Even worse, there were still 3 more guests scheduled to appear on a set that now looked like the aftermath of a storm. During the commercial break, Carson reportedly muttered to his producer, "This is why I should never book friends. They think they can get away with murder." Cleanup took so long that the next segment was delayed, forcing an extended commercial break, something rarely seen on such a tightly run program. When the show returned, Carson had changed his jacket and tried to restore order, but the damage remained visible. The rest of the evening continued on a set marked by stains, with Carson occasionally referring to the hurricane that had just passed through. What made this moment so remarkable was that it was one of the rare times Carson briefly lost control of his own show. Unlike other incidents involving a single unpredictable guest, this was a shared, escalating chaos. Afterward, Reynolds sent Carson a new suit as a peace offering, while DeLuise reportedly sent industrial-strength carpet cleaner. Carson, ever the professional, even joked about it the next night, saying the show was now sponsored by cleaning products. Despite the mayhem, both men were invited back many times, just never together again. As Carson later joked, he simply couldn't afford the cleaning bills. When Red Fox appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975, he was riding high as the star of Sanford and Son. Known for his bold humor and fiery personality, he was a major guest for Johnny Carson, who admired his influence in comedy. But the trouble began before Foxx even reached the stage. A heavy smoker, Foxx was informed backstage about NBC's new no-smoking policy. His reaction was immediate and sharp: no smoke, no joke. Despite efforts from producers to calm him, the rule was firm, and Foxx grew increasingly irritated. When the show resumed, Carson introduced him as usual. Foxx walked out and took his seat, but the tension was obvious. Instead of easing into conversation, he immediately brought up the issue on air. "Johnny, they tell me I can't smoke out here. I've been smoking on television for years. What's the problem now?" Caught off guard, Carson tried to keep things light, explaining it was a network rule. He even joked about stepping outside for a cigarette later, hoping to move the conversation forward. But Foxx wasn't willing to let it go. "It's about respect," he said firmly. "I've been in this business 30 years. The audience grew quiet, sensing this was no longer entertainment. Moments later, Foxx stood up, adjusted his jacket, and made his decision clear. "No, man, this is wrong. I don't perform where I'm not respected." Then he added, "Sorry, Johnny. No smoke, no joke. And just like that, he walked off the stage. The audience gasped. Carson, visibly shaken, paused before turning calmly to Ed McMahon and saying they would go to an early commercial break. When the show returned, Carson handled the moment with professionalism, offering a brief, composed remark before continuing with the program. But the mood had changed. For Carson, the issue was not disagreement, but how it was handled. To him, once the cameras were rolling, the show came first. The moment became legendary, one of the rare times a guest simply stood up and left mid-interview. It would be years before Foxx returned, and their relationship never fully recovered. As Carson later reflected with quiet wisdom, after decades in television, he had learned one simple lesson: never begin with a question about smoking. In 1979, long before becoming a global icon, Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared on The Tonight Show as a young bodybuilder promoting pumping iron. At the time, he was bold, confident, and largely unfiltered, carrying himself with the swagger of someone already used to attention. Johnny Carson, always comfortable with athletes, began the interview with standard questions about training and competition. Everything felt routine. But when Carson casually asked Arnold to describe the feeling of the pump, the surge of blood into the muscles during intense exercise, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Arnold responded with a comparison that was far more explicit than anything typically heard on network television in the 1970s. He spoke with complete confidence, offering vivid descriptions that quickly pushed beyond accepted broadcast standards of the time. The reaction in the studio was immediate silence. Carson, known for his quick wit and subtle humor, was visibly caught off guard. His expression shifted, and he adjusted his tie, an unmistakable sign of discomfort for longtime viewers. Trying to regain control, he offered a restrained response, but it was clear the moment had already slipped beyond his usual command. What made the situation even more striking was Arnold's apparent lack of awareness. He continued speaking in the same tone, as if nothing unusual had happened, while Carson attempted to guide the conversation back to safer territory. Behind the scenes, producers began signaling urgently for the segment to be wrapped up. According to staff, the control room moved into near panic, with executives calling in as the interview unfolded live. Carson, ever the professional, managed to redirect the discussion toward Arnold's achievements. But the tension lingered. The audience, initially stunned, eventually responded with uneasy laughter, reacting as much to Carson's discomfort as to Arnold's remarks. During the break, Carson reportedly made a quiet joke to Ed McMahon about the situation, reflecting how unusual the moment had been. It was one of the rare occasions where his composure appeared genuinely shaken on air. Despite the incident, Arnold's career continued to rise. Some later viewed the moment as an early sign of his bold, unapologetic personality. As one producer later remarked, he either didn't fully understand the rules or simply chose to ignore them. Arnold would not return to the show for several years. When he did, he appeared far more media aware. And Johnny, with the weariness of a man who'd been burned before, steered very clear of any questions about the pump. When Madonna stepped onto The Tonight Show in May 1987, she wasn't there to play it safe, she was there to push limits. At the height of her provocative era, with the Who's That Girl tour about to launch, she had already built a reputation for turning every appearance into a headline. That night would be no different. From the moment she walked out in a black lace outfit that barely met broadcast standards, it was clear she had no intention of giving a typical interview. Instead of keeping her distance, she moved in close, far closer than guests usually did, immediately breaking the careful space Johnny Carson always maintained. When Carson asked about her film, she didn't promote it in the usual way. Instead, she leaned in and said, "They wouldn't let me do the really fun stuff, the scene where my character teaches someone how to really enjoy himself." The tone alone was enough to shift the room. Carson tried to steer things back. "So, it's a comedy?" But Madonna doubled down. With a wink to the camera, she added, "Johnny, I can show you what got cut if you come back to my hotel. I'm very hands-on with my character development." Carson, rarely unsettled, tugged at his tie, a subtle sign he was losing control of the moment. But Madonna wasn't finished. The audience reacted with a mix of surprise and uneasy laughter. At one point, her comments triggered the network's delay system, causing sudden audio cuts that signaled something inappropriate had just been said. And it didn't happen just once. Trying to recover, Carson joked, "I'm starting to think I should have booked Mother Teresa instead of the material girl tonight." The audience laughed, but the tension didn't go away. Then came the moment that crossed an unspoken line. Madonna placed her hand on Carson's knee and said softly, "You can handle me, Johnny. I promise I won't bite unless you want me to." The camera caught his expression shift from polite amusement to real discomfort. Behind the scenes, the control room was in full panic. Producers were preparing to cut to commercial if things went any further. Yet Carson, relying on years of experience, slowly redirected the conversation towards safer topics. Even so, Madonna maintained that same bold energy until the very end. When the segment finally wrapped, Carson's relief was unmistakable, caught on camera as he wiped his brow. That night, Madonna didn't just entertain, she disrupted the entire rhythm of the show. And in doing so, she achieved something very few ever could. She made Johnny Carson uncomfortable on his own stage. While never publicly commenting on the appearance, Carson was overheard telling a producer, "Next time, let's stick with guests who understand the difference between The Tonight Show and an Amsterdam red light district." When Zsa Zsa Gabor appeared on The Tonight Show in 1979, she was already a familiar presence, having made over 100 appearances, always bringing glamour, wit, and stories that blurred the line between charm and scandal. The segment began exactly as audiences expected. Draped in furs, surrounded by perfume, she greeted Johnny Carson with her signature da link, settling in to share tales of luxury, marriages, and high society. By that point, she had been married multiple times and spoke openly about her romantic life without hesitation. When Carson casually asked about her recent trip to the south of France, Gabor reached into her purse and, without warning, pulled out a small gold bikini. Holding it up for the audience, she declared, "Johnny Daylink, this is what I was wearing when I met my fourth husband. Or maybe my fifth, no matter." The audience burst into laughter, but Carson was visibly caught off guard. Trying to respond, he remarked cautiously, while Gabor continued without pause. Still holding the bikini, she launched into a detailed story about that encounter, how the outfit had immediately caught attention and led to a memorable meeting. Her tone was playful, confident, and completely uninhibited, leaving little to the imagination without ever slowing down. She continued, even mentioning other well-known figures who had admired her in that same bikini, some of whom, notably, were not unattached at the time. With no delay system in place back then, everything she said went straight to air. At one point, Gabor turned to Carson and insisted he hold the bikini top up against himself. Caught between maintaining professionalism and keeping the segment moving, he reluctantly complied, his expression a mix of polite amusement and clear discomfort. She spoke freely, acted freely, and showed no concern for the usual limits of television. By the end of the segment, Carson's usual calm demeanor had shifted. As the show cut to commercial, he carefully handed the bikini back using only his fingertips, as if trying to distance himself from the moment entirely. In the aftermath, he reportedly received several calls from individuals mentioned during the interview. His response was simple and telling: he was only the host, and some things, even for him, were beyond control. A routine interview was already underway when everything suddenly broke loose. In 1976, Johnny Carson was mid-conversation with actor Robert Blake when unexpected noise erupted backstage. Without warning, Don Rickles burst through the curtain unannounced, unscheduled, and completely uninvited. "Johnny, I heard you were saying terrible things about me," Rickles shouted as he stormed onto the set, still in makeup from another show. Carson's reaction was real. This wasn't planned. For a split second, he looked off stage, then quickly recovered with a joke, introducing Rickles as if he had just escaped supervision. Instead of leaving, he dragged a chair onto the set and inserted himself into the interview. Turning to Blake, he quipped, "Don't mind me. I'm just here to make sure Johnny doesn't bore America." What followed was nearly 20 minutes of unscripted chaos. Rickles interrupted constantly, dominating the conversation. At one point, he grabbed Carson's coffee mug, peered inside, and mocked him for what he found. Then he crossed a line few guests ever dared, walking behind Carson's desk. Ignoring Carson's protests, Rickles opened drawers, pulled out personal items, and held them up for the audience. "Nothing's private on television," he declared, turning the moment into his own show. The situation escalated further when he began touching props around the set, even damaging a decorative piece behind the desk. Carson warned him half-serious that it would come out of his paycheck. Rickles fired back instantly, telling the network to cover it. Behind the scenes, panic set in. There was no delay, no way to cut or control what was happening. Producers scrambled as Rickles effectively hijacked the show live on air. Carson faced a choice: fight it or let it play out. He chose the latter. Leaning back in his chair, lighting a cigarette, he allowed Rickles to run wild. It was a calculated decision. Sometimes, the best way to handle chaos was to let it unfold. After nearly 20 minutes, Carson finally managed to push the show to commercial. When it returned, Rickles was gone, though, not before extracting a promise for a future appearance. What could have been a disaster became something else entirely. Viewers loved it. The next day, calls flooded in, not complaints, but praise. Even Carson leaned into it, joking about increased studio security and putting Rickles on a most wanted list. A perfect example of live television at its most unpredictable and most unforgettable. Do you think it was a staged act to make the show more interesting? Or was it for some other reason? He didn't walk on stage, he staggered into it. Oliver Reed appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975. His reputation for heavy drinking was already well established. But that night, the situation was clear before cameras even rolled. Backstage, he rejected water and coffee, insisting on something stronger, leaving production staff uneasy and forcing them to warn Johnny Carson in advance. Carson, confident as always, believed he could manage it. But once Reed stepped out, it was obvious this wasn't going to be a normal interview. He collapsed into the chair, posture loose, speech slurred. Carson opened with a standard question about his latest film, but Reed's response wandered immediately, jumping from topic to topic, from personal stories to unrelated incidents, never forming a clear answer. It wasn't a conversation. It was a monologue with no direction. Carson tried to regain control, using his well-known technique of gently redirecting difficult guests. But Reed barely paused, talking over him and continuing without structure. The audience shifted from polite laughter to visible discomfort as the tone became increasingly unpredictable. Reed attempted to stand and demonstrate something but nearly lost his balance. Grabbing onto Carson's desk, he knocked over a mug, spilling water across the host's notes and suit. For a brief second, Carson's expression revealed real concern before he covered it with humor, calmly remarking that the desk should probably stay in place. Behind the scenes, producers were already signaling to end the segment. This had crossed from awkward into risky. Recognizing there was no way to recover the interview, Carson moved to close it early smoothly, thanking Reed and suggesting they continue another time. To viewers, it felt controlled. In reality, it was a necessary exit. As the show cut to commercial, Reed appeared confused, still speaking, unaware it was over. Staff quickly stepped in to guide him off stage. The aftermath was tense. Executives were furious, and Reed was never invited back. Carson, however, remained measured, later describing him simply as a talented actor who had an overly enthusiastic evening. The incident became a cautionary tale within NBC about the risks of booking guests known for unpredictable behavior, particularly on a live broadcast where there was limited ability to control unexpected situations. It also highlighted Carson's extraordinary professionalism. His ability to maintain his composure and protect both his show and his inebriated guest from a complete on-air meltdown. Behind all the laughter and chaos, these moments reveal something deeper about live television and about human nature itself. Fame doesn't make people predictable. It often amplifies who they already are. And when there's no script, no second take, and nowhere to hide, the truth has a way of slipping through, sometimes funny, sometimes uncomfortable, but always real. That's what made these moments unforgettable, and why we're still talking about them decades later. As Tonight Show writer Raymond Smith once said, most hosts today will capitalize on every minute of a disastrous situation to attract viewers. But Johnny Carson was different. When things spiraled out of control, his instinct wasn't to create chaos but to control. He protected the moment, the guest, and the audience. That's the difference between a host and a legend. If you're enjoying this kind of story, tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.